Dr. Rajshri Ramakrishna is a disciple of Kalaimamani Karekudi Srimati Rajeshwari Padmanabhan in Veena and disciple of Padma Bhushan P.S. Narayanaswamy and Sangeeta Kala Acharya Srimati Suguna Varadachari in vocal. She is a graded artist of All India Radio. She was the chairperson of School of Fine and Performing Arts. Presently, the Associate Professor and Head of the Department of Indian Music, University of Madras. She is going to present Carnatic music of Thanjavur tradition. Please, ma'am.
This is too high, no? Is this okay? I know, Jayanthi. No. This PowerPoint is good. Yeah. Keep it here. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. My pranams to Dr. Padma Subramaniam ji and Ramakoshalya madam, and of course J.J.R. Krishnan ji and Vijay Lakshmi ji. I would like to thank the Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts and South Zone Cultural Center Thanjavur for giving me this opportunity, and also my pranams are due to Dr. Padma Subramaniam madam for giving me an opportunity to speak. And my topic is Carnatic music of the Thanjavur tradition. The present day Carnatic music has developed in the last 4 centuries, which can be traced from the 16th century onwards. Thanjavur emerged as a cultural center during the 17th, 18th and 19th century. I am only restricting to that period because already Thanjavur was so well established because of the Oduvar tradition, which has come from the Chola period onwards itself. According to Dr. Sita, she has written this, compiled the work called Tanjore as a Seat of Music. And she belongs to my alma mater. She has been my guru. And she was the head of the department when I was studying in the department. So my pranams to her also for, this is, there is so much of information in this that it keeps, like if you take the Oduvar tradition, it goes. You have the Bhakti movement, you have the Bhajana tradition, Harikatha tradition. See, so many traditions are there, Bhagavata Mela Nataka. So there are so many traditions which can be traced to the present day. It has been established centuries ago, and you can, get the lineage. And all of us are part of this big, huge tradition. Somewhere or the other, all of us belong to that tradition, whose roots have been, this Thanjavur has been the big banyan tree which has supported all these kelaigal, I would say. Okay. Now I have divided, next slide please. I have divided this talk into history, royal patrons of music, contribution to Thanjavur, of Thanjavur to Sangeeta Lakshana of Carnatic music, evolution of the musical forms, contribution of composers and musicians. Next slide. This is the map of Thanjavur and the places listed. This is an old map of Thanjavur, and the places listed under this are, please move to the next slide, Ananda Tandavapuram, Avadiyar Koil, Ayyampettai, Darasuram, Dharmapuram, Govindapuram, Karekkal, Kodikkare, Kumbakonam, Mahadevapatnam, Maharajapuram, Manampuchavadi, Mangudi, Mannargudi, Marudanallur, Mayavaram, Melattur, Muranallur, Nallur, Pandanai Nallur, Papanasam, Pattishwaram. இன்னைக்கு நம்ம தஞ்சாவூர்னு சொன்னா ஒரு ஸ்டேஷனா இருக்கு. It was not so. Thanjavur covered, there's another slide also. There are totally 60 places which are comes under Thanjavur. Thalainayar, Thanjavur, Tarangambadi, Tepperumanallur, Thillayadi, Tirumullayadi, Tiruppanandal, Tirutturaipundi, and so on. So all the musicians' names whose prefix we have heard, all of them are part of Thanjavur. Okay. Next slide, please. Thanjavur had a glorious musical history documented from the 10th century. The Nayak rule prevailed in Thanjavur from 14th to the 16th century. This was the period of Purandaradasa and Thalapakam composers. The Kirtana form has already been established by the Oduvars. இது வந்து ஒரு language, if you take Purandaradasa in Kannada, I would say it was only a linguistic difference. Otherwise, the form had already been created. Purandaradasa and Thalapakam composers. Text like Swaramela Kalanidhi was written during this period, 1550. Our Mela nomenclature that we follow today traces its history back to from Swaramela Kalanidhi onwards. Thanjavur emerged as a center of culture which kept itself open to the influence of the north and the east, and to some extent the west, under the lineage of the Maratha rulers. The favorable environment of Thanjavur attracted all traditions and cultures, including the Bhakti movement, the Kirtana movement, thus paved the way for several cultures getting settled here. Geographically, the district of Thanjavur had an ideal location in the deltaic region of Kaveri, known as the garden and granary of South India. Like the Ganges in the north of India, Kaveri Delta is the most fertile area in the southern belt of India. Amidst nature's bounteousness, arts flourished under the patronage of all the patrons. Carnatic music flourished due to the liberal patronage of Cholas, Nayaks, and the Marathas. Most important patrons of the next slide, please. Most important patrons of the Nayak period were King Raghunatha Nayak and King Vijay Raghava Nayak. Vagekaras, Vainikas, Gayakas, dancers were employed under the royal patronage and on paid emoluments. So, idella appa irundha oru தொழில்கள் அப்படின்னு நினச்சோம்னா these were the way of life people chose, and it remained a way of life. It was not a hobby or இப்போ நம்ம formal education has become the mainstream and all others are considered as hobbies or something. Then they say, okay, you follow your passion, and they take it up as a passion later. But in that formative years, in fact, we should be spending 8 to 10 hours of learning in these, that should be the mainstay. Anyway, division of land into musical and dance regions like Geetha Vinoda Valanadu and Ritta Vinoda Valanadu. Free gifts of land, villages, and houses for musicians and other artists were in practice. The outcome of the liberal patronage was seen in the form of various musical forms, composers. Honoring musicians was an important practice during the period. Musicians and all artists, I would say. See, I am speaking, I don't know, somehow it comes naturally because I am part of, I consider, but as a musician, but it's not so. I mean, I'm wrong in a lot of places. I'm making some wrong statements, but it is, as an artist, everybody was patronized. If you were an artist, you were necessarily patronized. Establishment of Saraswati Mahal Library, Natakashalas in the palace also validate the patronage received by musicians and artists. Performances in the form of concerts, dance performances, music contests were held in the Royal Darbar and the Sangeeta Mahal. Patronage for writing works on Lakshana and Lakshya of music, manufacturing and evolution of musical instruments was encouraged. Now, Thanjavur is known for many, all of you may be knowing, it is known for the Thanjavur Veene. I will be coming later, or is it here? Okay. Next slide. Okay, the important Lakshman granthas that had their origin in Thanjavur are Sangeeta Sudha, Chaturdhandi Prakashika, Raga Lakshanamu of Sahaji, Sangeeta Saramrita, and again I'm restricting it to the present grammar of Carnatic music that we are following, but there are many works, between these works, before these works, and also after these works. The evolution and establishment of the different nomenclatures of the 72 Mela classification. Here I would like to say that if you take Sangeeta Sudha, Raga Lakshanamu, Sangeeta Saramrita, and later Raga Lakshanam of, that is Sangeeta Sudha is Raghunatha Nayak. Then we have Raga Lakshanamu of Shaha Maharaja. Sangeeta Saramrita follows the same classification as given in Raga Lakshanamu. And later you have Raga Lakshanam of Muddu Venkatamaki. These contribute to the Dikshitar Parampara classification of the Raganga Raga. And Chaturdandi Prakashika, Sangraha Chudamani, these works are the precedents to the Tyagaraja Parampara. So what is the basic difference? There was just a small introduction. There is a classification which they say as Sampurna Mela and Asampurna Mela. Somehow I do not accept the Asampurna because there's nothing Asampurna about the Melas. All Melas are considered as Sampurna in some way or the other. If for example I take the Sri Raga Mela, in the Raganga Raga it is classified as the 22nd Mela. In the Tyagaraja Parampara it is called as Karahara Priya. Now in the Sri Ragam also is a Sampurna status and the Karahara Priya is also Sampurna. So but earlier the older Sri Ragam did not have the Prayoga Padanipama. So, but when they were compiling the Raganga Ragas, they included Dikshitar tradition, they included that Padanipama to make it Sampurna. But there is a note which Dikshitar has written for that, or rather Subbarama Dikshitar in his Sangeeta Sampradaya Pradarshini says that Padanipama can only be used once, or the raga will be complete even if it is not used, and even if it is used, it can only be used once. So what does it mean? It means that that phrase has been added to complete or make it a Sampurna. In the same Mela, there was another raga called Usani or Useni, which was Sampurna, but they did not consider it to be named as the Mela because its origin was from the north. So much of thought process has gone into creating the whole Mela structures in the both the traditions. So this Asampurna is word somehow I've always disagreed. First time when I read Samamurti itself, I kept on thinking, what is this Asampurna? When you're talking of Melas, either they have to be Krama, in the Dikshitar tradition, the Murchanas are taken into consideration. The Krama is not, though he gives it as a scale, but the raga proceeds with its own grammar or phrase oriented. So this Krama Sampurna has created or paved the way for creation of many new ragas. By omitting or omitting some swaras, they create more ragas. So that is what this particular classification has paved the way. But the Raganga Raga, yes, every raga is so deep and it has so much of wealth in it that you feel you can delve into it instead of, So, okay. Then you have the 24 fretted veena, which was perfected, and this veena, it is also known as the Thanjavur Melam. So the whole the 12 swarasthanas are getting fixed, the 16 swara names are getting fixed, the 24 fretted instrument, which today they're in the yogic, this thing, they're comparing it to the spine of the person and the, those, wherever there is those harmonics which are created are the nada centers. So all those studies are there. So there is a esoteric value to this instrument which has been from north to south. It has been, even the Sufi saints use the Thanjavur Veena for their meditation. So this is the meaning of this instrument. The Veena like instruments came by invasions, or they came from other parts of the world. But the veena is an indigenous instrument which has been created with this jackfruit. Now this jackfruit is a jack tree is a wood which has both பால் தன்மை எண்ணெய் பசை இருக்கிற ஒரு மரம். இது வந்து நாளடைவில் அது வந்து ஒரு it keeps getting seasoned and it becomes as strong as iron. It cannot be destroyed, that particular wood. Unlike all other woods that are used like for example you have sitar, they have used the miraj or miraj tanpuras that we have. Those are all perishable material. Whereas the jackwood which has been chosen and which is the main cultivated in this belt, today in the IITs this particular wood is being taken up and they are researching on this, trying to figure out why this wood was used, and this has come to stay. Other states like in Mysore you had Mysore Veenas, you had Trivandrum Veenas. Today only the Thanjavur Veenas exist because of the way it was created, the longevity of the wood and the longevity of the instrument. So andha oru I think madam can later on give us some highlight us on that. I'm still here. Can we move on to the next slide, please? I think. Okay. According to Dr. Sita, the soul-stirring compositions of the musical trinity were primarily responsible for creating the Thanjavur tradition in Carnatic music parlance. If you take in the Thanjavur Bani, abdin edutundomana, we have the Nayanakaras, the Nagaswaram Bani, we have the Veena Banis, we have the Gayaka Banis. Veena Bani alone, Thanjavur style, has the Dhanamal tradition and the Karaikudi tradition coming under it. In the great Gayaka traditions were modeled after the Veena Banis or the Nagaswaram Banis. So all of it has originated in this Thanjavur. Okay, the next slide. Next is the contribution of the musical trinity in the way of composers and Sishya Paramparas that were created. This whole Paramparas lineage today, the Odwar who performed before we had this, he was also talking of great lineages and Paramparas. He was talking about so many generations he was able to just say from his memory. Spontaneity, I was really எனக்கு ரொம்பவே வியப்பாக இருந்தது அவரோட ஒரு பதிகத்தோடைய அந்த ஹிஸ்ட்ரி சொல்கிறப்போ. இட் வாஸ் ஓகே. தியாகராஜ சுவாமி, I think next the Tyagaraja Sishya Parampara. Please go to the next slide. We have the Umayalapuram Sishya Parampara, the Tilaisthanam Sishya Parampara and Valajapeti Sishya Parampara. Now these were basically these three Sishya Paramparas were basically performing paramparas. The Manambuchavadi Sishya Parampara had many composers, mostly composers in their parampara. It is not, I am not saying that these first three did not have composers, they also had, but the last Manambuchavadi, all of them were composers, whereas here they also established performing traditions, great performing traditions and also composing. But whereas the Manambuchavadi tradition solely they are known for their composing. I'll just give some names. Under the Umayalapuram Sishya Parampara, we have Umayalapuram Krishna Bhagavatar and Umayalapuram Sundara Bhagavatar. And the next generation is Tiruthyur Ramaswamy Iyer and Umayalapuram Swami Bhagavatar. Adutha generation வந்து Umayalapuram Natesh Iyer, Fiddle Venkatram Iyer. இந்த சுவாமி பாகவதரும் சுவாமிநாத ஐயர், சுவாமிநாத ஐயரோட லீனேஜில் பார்த்தேன்னா உமையாளபுரம் எஸ் வெங்கட்ராம் ஐயர், அவரோட அடுத்த ஜெனரேஷன் வந்து யூ ஹேவ் மருத்துவக்குடி ராஜகோபால் ஐயர் who lived with us around the 80s, even the 80s when we were in college we have met him and he used to sing lot of the Tyagaraja compositions in the original mette or the original Padantram. he also belongs to the lineage of Melakaveri Ramamurthy Iyer. So ஒரு மியூசிஷியன் எடுத்துட்டாலே ரெண்டு டீச்சர்ஸ் கிட்ட கற்றுக்கிற ஒரு பரம்பரையும் இருந்திருக்கு. லைக் கல்லிடைக்குறிச்சி வேதாந்த பாகவதர், மகாராஜபுரம் விஸ்வநாத் ஐயர், பாலகாட் Rama Bhagavatar, all of them. Then from Maharajapuram Vishwanath Iyer, we have Semmangudi Srinivas Iyer, Manargudi Sambasiva Bhagavatar, Maharajapuram Santanam. So, and the list is very, from Semmangudi also we have MS, TMT Sir, VR Krishnan, PS Narayan Swami, Kadilanur Venkatraman, Trivandrum, RS Mani, V Subramaniam, KR Kedarnathan, Sita Rajan. So, list is like till the present. That's what I said. Everyone who's learning music today can trace back their lineage to this great parampara of musicians. I don't think any other profession anywhere in the world has this kind of a rich lineage. So, and I would like to go to the Manam Buchavadi Sishya Parampara. In Manam Buchavadi Sishya Parampara, he was the nephew of Tyagaraja Swami, was Patnam Subramanya Iyer, Mahavaidinath Iyer and Ramaswamy Iyer, Susarla Dakshinamurti Shastri. Then you have Venugana Sarabha Shastri. So, Susarla Dakshinamurti Shastri is Mangalampalli Balamurli Krishna's lineage. Then Venuganam Sarabha Shastri, he established the flute tradition. Then we have Thanjavur Lavani Venkatrao. He is the one who composed the Bahattara Mela Ragamalika, which has been documented in Sangraha Chudamani, who paved the way for the composition of the 72 Mela Ragamalika by Mahavaidinath Sivan and Ramaswamy Sivan. So, this way, you have this whole lineage of composers coming in. Next slide, please. We have the, see, if I were to trace, if Mangalampalli Balamurli Krishna's composition, we have Lalgudi Sri Jayaramanji composing. So, everywhere you have musician, we have great performers, they have been great musicians, they have been great composers. So, that lineage of composing is coming, I think, because of that thread which belongs, its beginning belongs to Tyagaraja Swami. Okay, next is the Dikshitar Parampara. We have Baluswami Dikshita, Suddhamadalam Thambiyappa Pillai. Here it is a combination of the Margam tradition coming into this tradition, and we also have the Nayanakaras, Nagaswaram traditions also coming into this Parampara, Sishya Parampara of Muthuswami Dikshitar. We have Baluswami Dikshitar, then Suddhamadalam Thambiyappa, Tenur Subramanya Iyer, Satanur Panchanad Iyer. Under Satanur Panchanad Iyer is Veena Dhanammal and younger sister Rupavati Ammal. Tirupambaram Nataraja Sundaram Pillai has learned there. Then Tirukodikaval Krishna Iyer comes under Satanur Panchanad Iyer. So, the next is a very important slide. Please, the next slide is the genealogy of the Tiruvarur Nagaswaram players. See, they have a huge, their tradition is being, you can trace back to something like 15 to 20 generations. They are able to trace back the Nayanakara tradition. And we have Adi Samaya, Swaminatha Ayya, and Adiyappa Ayya comes under this lineage of Nagaswaram players. Then Chinnaya Pillai, I am just looking for some familiar names. I am myself not so, the Thanjavur quartet come in here, and also these we have Tiruvarur Ramaswamy Pillai. Okay, I think you go on to the next slide is the Thanjavur quartet. We have Chinnaya Pillai, Ponnaya Pillai, Sivanandam and Vadivelu. Now, somewhere we find, see, the musical traditions are drawing from the present, the practices or the performing traditions which existed during that period, like the Bhagavata Mela Nataka, the Harikatha tradition. We have Harikatha included so many musical forms like the Saki, Dindi, Ovi, you have the Abhangs, so all those Marathi traditions coming in. So all that amalgamated into the this musical trinity's style of composing. You will find, and okay, I forgot to mention, in the Valajapeta tradition we had Sadashiva Rao, who was also a composer. He was more a composer than a performer. Okay. Then next I would like to go into the Shama Shastri Paramparai. We had, next slide please. Subraya Shastri, Annasami Shastri, Kanchipuram Kachiyappa Shastri, Chandragiri Rangacharlu, Shama Shastri the second, Natesha Shastri, and Nagaswaram prayer Govindan. So this was a period where all the Veena Paramparas, Nagaswaram Paramparas, the Gayaka Paramparas, all of them have been, there is a mutual learning. So that has amalgamated into what is the present day Carnatic music tradition that exists now. So, and now I would like to go into the 72 Mela classification. There are some younger generation of students or audience here also. For them, I would just be spending a few minutes to just explain how the classification came about. See, when the ragas, number of ragas during the Mela period, as they start increasing, vagaipaduங்கிறது எப்போ வந்து நிறைய வரப்போ அதை வந்து ஏதாவது ஒரு, they want to bring it under some classification. So for that purpose, the classification. But the 72 Mela was a very, very broad and bigger classification in which only the 20 Melas were fitted. The remaining spaces were created. And after those spaces were created and filled, the present day Janaka Janya classification of ragas has evolved. Please, can you put on the next slide I have given you? So, we have the two tetrachords. Okay, today the present day classification is raga, you have the Janaka and the Janya. And in the Janaka ragas, we have the Shuddha Madhyama ragas, the Pratimadhyama ragas. Janya ragas has the Upanga, Varja, Upanga, Bhashanga. Okay, now this Bhashanga is a concept. Today we link it, connect it only to the Anyaswara. But it is not. Historically, when you look at the Bhasha is something that has come from somewhere else. So it was known as the Bhashanga. That is the first classification. Even ragas like Mohanam, like Sri Ranjani were all considered as Bhashanga ragas. But today we are classifying, we say a Bhashanga raga means it must have an Anyaswara. Bhairavi is called a Bhashanga raga. Or we have Bilahari is considered Bhashanga raga. So when two notes of the same, a note, both the varieties of a note are present in a raga, then it is called as a Bhashanga raga. Okay. The next slide please. We have, the scale is divided into two tetrachords, where Sari, Sari, Saga, Saga, Sama, Sama, Ma is the dividing line. So till Ma it is a one tetrachord. So Si, Sari. So these are the three varieties of Ri. And Ga is Saga is Sadharana Gandhara. So Sari, Ga, Saga, Saga, Saga. So these are the three varieties of Ga. So you have three varieties of Ri and three varieties of Ga. இதை கமக்கத்தில் பாடினோம் அப்படின்னு சொன்னா சரி Gama Mayamalagola. This is our familiar raga. We know this. So we'll proceed from this. Sari Gama Sari Gama na Todi. Sari Gama Kararpriya Sari Gama na Shankarabaram. So in the Vivadi illama, that is in the 72 Mela classification, though we say Vivadi and non-Vivadi or not Vivadi, the Vivadi ragas are more than the non-Vivadi. There are 30 how many? 30 Vivadi, non-Vivadi ragas, and Vivadi are 42. So, irungo na tappa solranum. 40, irungo or nimisham. Appo 32. 32 is the non-Vivadi. Okay, the kanakku solliren. 12 chakras irukku. Idhula modalum kadasiyum vandu Vivadi. So 12 into 2 is 24. You have 24 Vivadi. Plus you have the first chakra, the 6th chakra, 7th and the 12th are completely Vivadi. So first we'll add that. So that is 6 into 4 is 24. And every chakra has the first and the last as Vivadi. So there are remaining 8 chakras. 8 into 2 is 16. So you add 24 to 16 is 40. So that is every time I calculate, 40 is Vivadi and the remaining 32 are non-Vivadi. Sari, in the non-Vivadi ku vandu enna nadakkuradhu appdinu sonnana and ipo Mayamalagola, if I take Mayamalagola for example, sari ga ma pada ni sa sari ga ma in the purvangatha அப்படியே வெச்சுண்டு பதனீசா 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 இப்படி இந்த இத மாதிரினால you have 4 varieties. So you have 4 மாயமளவோட பூர்வாங்கமா வெச்சுண்டா இங்க 4 probable varieties. இதுக்கு ஒரு பிரதிமதிமா மாத்தினோம்னா this becomes you get another 4. So in the madri you take every scale. So generally when we to understand this whole thing, if this is a method you can adopt. So you have the 2 tetrachords. First divide it into 2 tetrachords, have the ma as the dividing factor and separate them. Okay. So this is to remember this Kadapayadi ragas, both the Raganga Raga classification and the 72 Mela classification both fit into the Kadapayati Sankhya. That is, you can you can know the number of the raga by applying this process. So, and this Mela again, the grammar of the ragas adopted in the Tyagaraja Sishya Parampara is Tyagaraja Sishya Parampara, and their composers are different from that which is adopted by the Dikshita Parampara, but then there is a lot of mixing. Like if you take Ponnaya Pillai of the present day, he follows some ragas like Velavali and others in the Dikshita Parampara, some ragas, other ragas he follows in the Tyagaraja Parampara, because he was a disciple of Tiruvattur Tyagayar. So what I am saying is there was so much of give and take between these different paramparas that later on everything has now fitted into this classification, broader classification of Janaka Janya classification. So all these classifications do not mean anything. One has to only be faithful to the tradition in which they are learning and from which the tradition whose practices they are following, because that only one cannot get confused by these theory coming. Theory was written after the practice. So whatever is practiced, the lineage has to be maintained strictly. Yes, to analyze, to study, to understand, we are looking at all this. But all these things, for a performer, it is only the performance or the performing traditions that one has to imbibe and learn and propagate. That is very, very important. Otherwise, everything gets mixed up. One cannot just learn a composition from a recording and an audio or something and just perform, because that's not. Because there's so much of thought that has gone into the composition, that has gone into the nuances. Carnatic music is completely governed by the nuances that go into the raga or the raga lakshana. So without understanding those nuances, one cannot perform. So for that, Guru Mugama oral tradition is what is taking this lineage forward, and that one-on-one learning and this kind of a tradition, till that is there, all these arts will live in its fullest form. And Thanjavur was the center. I think, ma'am, can I close? Thanjavur was the center where the present day Carnatic music flourished due to the illustrious composers. the Nagaswaram Paramparas, the Vainika Paramparas, the Gayaka Paramparas, and here we are today celebrating this great tradition of Carnatic music. I thank this IGNCA and the South Zone Cultural Center and the whole team, Arupa Lahari and all their whole team, for seamlessly putting this program together. And once again, namaskar. ஸ்டேஜ் மேலே ஒரு ஸ்டேஜ் மேம் எல்லாரையும் பார்த்து ஒரு 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 பதட்டம் ஒரு ஒரு நர்வஸ்னஸ். இல்லை இல்லை, எனக்கு கிளாஸ் எடுக்கிறது வேற, அது சரி ஒன்றுமே இல்லை. ப்ளீஸ், இந்த டூ மெனி திங்ஸ் அரவுண்ட். ஆமாம், இது ஏறி வரதே பயமாக இருக்கு.
I have no words to thank Dr. Rajshri, Head of the Department of Music, Madras University. After she came here, I requested her to extend her speech for about 10 minutes, covering the Melakarta scheme also. Jayanthi, Kumaresh was supposed to deliver that lectum. She is not well, she could not be present, nor could she even send her virtual lecture. You see what a wonderful teacher that Dr. Rajshri is. In no time, she included the Melakarta scheme. Of course, she has to teach that to the students, because as I have been a student of Dr. Sita when I did my master's in Carnatic music in Madras University, it was a normally students study for the sake of writing examinations, but Dr. Sita would make it so interesting. She created a passion for the art. I was reminded of Dr. Sita when I heard Dr. Rajshri today. Both of us come from the same Shishya Parampara. We both have been students of that great lady. I will tell you a secret. I wanted to honor her in this festival, but Dr. Sita is not in a position to move. She is almost bedridden. But through Dr. Rajshri, I convey my respects to Dr. Sita. We heard Dr. Sita through Dr. Rajshri. Thank you so much for the wonderful... it's not easy to understand the importance and the nuances of Carnatic music in 30 minutes, but she made everybody understand that. And I'm sure those who do not know music will take more interest in classical music after this and just not stop with Kolavari.
I request Dr. Padma Subramaniam to felicitate Dr. Rajshri. Once the great writer Sujata said, if you cannot at least appreciate Carnatic music and study very little bit of Tamil Ilakyam, most of your lifetime is wasted. today Dr. Rajshri made sure that we all can appreciate Carnatic music more than we know. Thank you, Rajshri ma'am. And now we'll have a short tea break for 15 minutes. Please feel free to step out and have some refreshments. Thank you.